Well, the passing of Nelson Mandela has been described by former Prime Minister Malcolm Fraser as the loss of the greatest figure of the 20th century, and it's very hard to disagree with Malcolm Fraser. And Australia does have a very, very tangible and very real link to the story of Nelson Mandela, because it was our government, along with other Commonwealth governments, that really put the pressure on South Africa over the apartheid regime and the push for democracy in that country during the 1970s and 1980s, led first by Malcolm Fraser and then by Prime Minister Bob Hawke. And it was our sporting organisations and sport in this country that put the real pressure on South Africa. It was a rare instance of a regime which had disgraced itself to the rest of the world in terms of its treatment of its majority of its citizens. And in this case, it was a country where the religion in the country was sport, principally rugby and also cricket. And because of the small number of countries that played rugby and cricket at the elite level, those number of countries could be brought together and could then place sanctions on South Africa, withdraw from that country the sport that they craved. There were also, of course, trade sanctions, but it was the sporting sanctions that really hurt South Africa as it tried to make its way out into the world and to be a world citizen again. And those people from the worlds of cricket and rugby in the 90s, when things had been changed, when Nelson Mandela was freed, did acknowledge that those sporting bans played a big role in the changes that occurred in South Africa. But in a world where so much of the problems we face, in your own workplace, in your own family, among your own friends, in politics, in the politics of sport, so much of it is about people who bear grudges, who are involved in payback, who want to engage in retribution, who hold scores from many, many years ago that they want to settle. Here was a man who was jailed for nearly 3 decades. Now, he was entitled, when he was released as an old man, having been jailed for 3 decades and having seen his country moving towards the democracy for which he'd been fighting, he was entitled to go off and be an elder statesman. But in fact, he became the president of the country. He showed enormous grace and he did not engage in payback, and that is why his country was able to be transformed, and why in the 90s you saw scenes where white South Africans were chanting his name. It is an inspiration, and there are some lessons to be learnt from the life of the great Nelson Mandela. If only more people, your own family, your own workplace, and more leaders could behave like him, the world would certainly be a better place.